My sister's fiancé toasted to family unity while sliding a check for $8,000 across the table to my parents. The money? A thank you for raising his future wife. I was sitting right there. Nobody looked at me. Nobody said anything. Just fake smiles. And silence. That's when I realized they sold me out like I was invisible. You ever get that gut punch feeling like you just walked into a movie where you're the joke and everyone else already read the script? That was me last Thanksgiving. I was 24, living at home, working 2 jobs, and still somehow the backup plan for everyone else's mess. My name's Elijah. Yeah, not Elijah. Just Elijah. My parents wanted something biblical, but not overused, which, in hindsight, kind of set the tone for how they saw me useful, but not exactly important. Growing up, I played the role of the good son. I didn't get arrested. I didn't flunk out. I didn't scream when my dad forgot to show up to any of my wrestling matches. I just kept my head down and worked. Meanwhile, my younger sister Darcy was the centerpiece, daddy's princess, mommy's mirror image. She got dance lessons, tutors, a car on her 16th birthday. I got a part-time job in lectures about being grateful for what you have. Fine, whatever. I learned early that expectations lead to disappointment, but nothing, not even years of being the invisible child, prepared me for that dinner. It was supposed to be a family announcement. Darcy's fiancé, Wes, was joining us for the first time since their engagement. Mom went full Pinterest with the decorations, and Dad actually shaved. I should have known something was up. After the turkey, Wes stood up with a glass of wine and said, "Before dessert, I have a little gift for the people who raised the woman I love." He pulled out a check. $8,000 handwritten. Made out to my parents. "You deserve this," he said, smiling, "for raising Darcy with so much grace, for giving me a woman I'm proud to marry." They all clinked glasses like it was some heartwarming movie moment. I was still chewing my green bean casserole, frozen like someone had hit pause on my life. No. One looked at me. Not even a glance, like I wasn't even there. And the craziest part? My parents just smiled and nodded, like they'd earned it. Like this wasn't completely humiliating. You ever felt that kind of burn in your chest? That tight coil of rage and grief and shame all tangled together? I stood up. Darcy said, "Oh, are you getting dessert?" I said nothing. Walked straight to the kitchen, punched the countertop. Just once, not enough to break it. Just enough to know I was still real. I stayed there for 10 minutes. Not a single person came to check on me. Not one. Later that night, Mom knocked on my door. Said something like, "Don't take things so personally. Wes was just being generous." I said, "Did you even see me tonight?" She blinked. What's that supposed to mean? It meant I realized something dangerous. Something I tried not to admit for years. I wasn't a son to them. I was a spare. An extra body in the background. A helper when Dad's back gave out. A fill-in. Babysitter when Darcy was little. A guy who fixed the Wi-Fi and raked the leaves. But never Elijah, not really. The next day, I did something nuclear. I took the savings I built from working double shifts at the gas station and warehouse, and I bought a one-way ticket to Colorado. I didn't tell anyone. Left a note. "You didn't lose a son. You never noticed you had one." I figured they wouldn't care. Maybe they'd even be relieved. But 3 days later, my mom blew up my phone. 27 missed calls. A voicemail from Dad actually crying. Why? Because the check bounced. Turns out Wes wasn't a golden boy after all. He was unemployed. Deep in debt. The $8,000? Just a show. A fake flex for fake approval. And now my parents wanted me to come home. To fix everything. To help with the wedding. Too. Help Darcy. I laughed so hard, I nearly dropped my coffee. But that's just the beginning. You won't believe what I did next. Would you have walked away forever? Or returned to give them the karma they deserve? Let me know in the comments. But buckle up, because things are about to get brutal. 3 days after I landed in Denver, I started breathing differently. Not just from the altitude, but from the weight I'd finally dropped. The invisible pressure of being the family's afterthought. For the first time, I was just me. No guilt, no chores. No fake smiles over cold turkey and bounced checks. I crashed with an old college friend, Mateo. We'd lost touch. But when I told him the story, the dinner, the check, the voicemail, he just blinked and said, "Dude, you've been living in emotional poverty your whole life." He was right. I got a job within a week. Just warehouse stuff, nights and weekends, but it was mine. Every dollar I earned, I kept. I even started taking online courses in digital design, something I'd always wanted to do but was told didn't pay the bills. Meanwhile, back in Ohio, my phone was blowing up. Darcy sent a long performative text about how conflict isn't healthy in families, followed by a picture of her in a wedding dress captioned, "Wish you were here to see it." I almost threw up. But the kicker? My mom. She messaged me one night, "We really need you to be here. The wedding is 3 weeks away. Wes got laid off again and can't cover the photographer. Please think of your sister. You've always been the responsible one." Responsible one? Now I was useful? I didn't reply. I blocked her. The next day, she emailed me from a different account. Then Darcy started messaging my friend Mateo. I hadn't even told him I was staying with him. That's when I realized they weren't worried about me. They were scared of the wedding unraveling without the one guy who always showed up. I started keeping a folder. Screenshots. Messages. Proof. Because something in me clicked. A cold, sharp clarity I hadn't felt before. They didn't miss me. They missed the function I served, and they were scrambling not to make it right, but to rope me back in. But I wasn't just going to vanish quietly. If they wanted me back in the picture, I'd frame it myself. So I made a plan, not petty. Not dramatic. Strategic. First, I called Aunt Carol. She was my dad's older sister, a woman my parents always called bitter and alone, mostly because she had no kids and no patience for nonsense. She loved me. Always had. I told her the full story, and she said, "Elia, I'm buying your ticket. You're going to that wedding, but on your terms." 2 days later, I had a flight booked. I didn't tell anyone I was coming. I just showed up the day before the wedding, quiet, clean, calm. Walked into the rehearsal dinner like a ghost they forgot to bury. The silence was nuclear. Darcy's jaw dropped. Mom actually looked relieved until she noticed who was with me. Aunt Carol, wearing heels, pearls, and a look that could cut diamonds. I hugged everyone politely, didn't raise my voice, didn't even flinch when Wes gave me a sweaty handshake and a shaky, "Hey man, good to see you." They didn't know I had the receipts. They didn't know I had a plan. The wedding was at a fancy converted barn venue. Rustic wood, string lights, fake mason jars, the whole Pinterest core package. I stood in the back, let them forget I was there. And then, at the exact moment Darcy walked down the aisle, bouquet shaking slightly in her manicured hand, I handed the DJ a USB stick. He looked confused. I nodded once, then walked away. What played next? Not music. Not wedding bells, but a compilation of Wes's fake check. Of my mom's messages begging me for money, of Darcy's texts, trash talking me to her friends. Aunt Carol made sure it all played on the big screen behind the altar, in front of every guest. They scrambled to stop it, but the damage done, and I hadn't even touched the mic yet. What would you have done if your family only remembered you when they needed to use you? Would you show up and burn it all down, or disappear forever? Chaos. The kind of chaos you only see in dreams, where you show up to school naked or fall off a cliff but never hit the ground. Except this was real. Darcy was screaming, clutching her bouquet like it was a grenade. Wes tripped over the aisle runner, trying to yank the HDMI cable from the projector. My mom? Frozen, pale, like someone drained the last of her fake dignity right out of her face. And my dad? He just sat there, shaking his head, silent. The guests didn't know where to look. Some stared in shock. A few awkwardly filmed it, because of course they did. A couple of older relatives gasped and left, muttering about family disgrace and the poor bride. But Aunt Carol? She was sipping champagne like it was primetime television. Darcy finally shrieked, "What is this? Turn IT off." Turn ID off. I didn't move. Wes shoved the projector stand. It crashed, sparks flew, and everything went dark. Finally, but the silence that followed, it was louder than any explosion. Then came the voice I'd been waiting for. My mother. "Elia, what the hell have you done?" I turned around slowly, exposed the truth. "You're welcome." Her mouth twitched. "You ruined your sister's wedding." "No," I said calmly. "You ruined this entire family a long time ago." I just turned on the light so everyone else could see it. She stepped toward me, shaking. "We took care of you your whole life." "No," I said, sharper now. "You used me. You ignored me. You pretended I didn't matter. Until your golden child needed something you couldn't afford." Darcy stormed up, makeup running, tears streaking like war paint. "You are dead." To me, dead. I looked her in the eye. You never saw me alive in the first place. And I walked out, through gasps, through whispers, through 20 years of swallowed pain finally echoing in the open air. I didn't go back to the hotel. I didn't check my phone. I didn't need to. I knew I'd scorched earth, salted it, and walked away without looking back. But life? Life had more twists ready. 2 days later, while I was back in Denver, I got a call from an unknown number. Against my better judgment, I picked up. Is this Elia Jensen? Who's asking? This is Claire from Windspring Studios. We handle documentary series focused on real-life family drama. One of our field producers saw the footage from your sister's wedding. And, well, we're interested. I blinked. Interested in what? In telling your story. Apparently, the clip had made it to someone's Instagram reel, then TikTok, then YouTube. One of Darcy's bridesmaids had leaked it for clout. The world now knew me as the Wedding Avenger. At first, I thought it was a joke. Until the email started. Sponsorships. Interview. Request. Podcast invites. I even got a message from a woman named Cassidy in Arizona who said, "You're my hero." My parents did the same thing. I wish I had your courage. I didn't feel brave. I felt. Release. I gave the documentary team limited rights. Enough to control the narrative, to show the emotional reality. No embellishment. Just the raw truth. Doc aired 6 months later. Title: Invisible Son. It went viral. The kicker? Darcy tried to sue. Claimed I defamed her. That I manipulated the wedding and ruined her future. But the court laughed her out. She was already divorced by then. West left her 2 months after the wedding. Turns out, being publicly humiliated isn't great for new marriages. Especially when your generous fiancé is a jobless liar and everyone you know has seen the receipts. Last I heard, she moved to Texas. Teaches yoga. Still trying to scrub the internet of her past. And my parents? I haven't spoken to them since the wedding. Not once. They sent birthday cards. Sometimes empty envelopes. No words. I keep them in a drawer. As proof, that silence can be louder than screams. Have you ever felt invisible in your own family? If you had the chance to finally be seen, would you take it, even if it cost everything? And karma? She's just getting started. The documentary blew up. I wasn't ready for what came next. Overnight, I went from background character in my own life to the face of a movement. Messages poured in. Hundreds. Then thousands. People sharing their stories, their pain, their buried rage. Saying things like, "Thank you for saying what I never could. You made me feel seen." I was the invisible son too. I read them all. Every single one. I cried more in those 2 weeks than I had in 10 years. And then the call started again. Not from my family, from their friends, from their pastor. From people I hadn't spoken to since middle school saying, "Your parents are devastated. Maybe it's time to move on." Move on. From a lifetime of erasure? From being a footnote in my own family tree? One message stood out. It was from Mr. Kemper, my old high school English teacher. "Elia, your story broke my heart. But more than that, it broke something open. Thank you. Don't let them guilt you. Some people only cry when the mask comes off." Exactly. Because the guilt was starting to creep in. That old, familiar voice in my head whispering, was it too much? Should I have kept it private? What if I made things worse? Then something happened that silenced that voice completely. Woman emailed me, subject line, "I think I dated your sister's ex." Inside, screenshots, text messages, bank transfers. From Wes to her, while he was still engaged to Darcy. Turns out, he'd been cheating for months with 3 different women. Told all of them he was stuck in a toxic relationship with a controlling fiancé and just needed time to get out. And the $8,000 check? That wasn't just fake. It was fraudulent. He forged a check from an old employer he'd been fired from. That company? Now threatening legal action. He was facing charges. It felt like poetic justice. But I wasn't done yet. Because my family, even after everything, was still out there telling their version of the story. Painting me as vengeful, mentally unstable, emotionally manipulative. So I did what they feared most. I went on live television. Not for drama. Not for fame. To speak. Unfiltered. It was a special episode of a nationally syndicated talk show. Audience full of people who'd lived through similar betrayals. Families who'd chosen one child over another. People who'd spent years wondering if their pain was valid. I walked on stage, hands trembling, looked into the camera, and said, "To anyone out there who's been told you're overreacting, that your pain isn't real, that being ignored isn't abuse, I see you, I believe you, and you're not alone anymore." The crowd stood up, and I knew right then I hadn't just told my story, I'd rewritten it. But the fallout? It was still falling. 2 weeks later, I got a letter handwritten from my dad. "You embarrassed us. You turned your back on the people who raised you. Whatever sympathy you got, it won't last. One day you'll see what a mistake this was. No apology, no ownership, just bitterness." And shame that night. I burned the letter in my sink, watched the edges curl, watched the ink melt away, felt something lift then. I got a message that chilled me. A woman named Lydia, Darcy's old college roommate. She said, "I thought you should. No, your mom is trying to organize a redemption event. Some kind of charity gala. She's spinning it as a story about family reconciliation after hardship. She's already invited a news outlet." I laughed so hard I choked on my coffee. They were trying to profit off my pain again, this time under the mask of healing. But healing? Healing doesn't come from hiding, it comes from truth. And I was ready to deliver more of it. What would you do if your abusers tried to turn your pain into their redemption arc? Would you let them reclaim the narrative, or would you strike back again? Comment below, because the confrontation begins, and it's going to be devastating. The Redemption Gala. That's what they called it. Gold-embossed invitations. Catered dinner, open bar. My mother smiling in the promotional flyer like she was hosting the Met Gala for broken families. She called it a night of healing. Healing. For whom? Not for the son they ghosted. Not for the truth they buried for years. Not for the mess they made and the silence they expected me to swallow. No. It was damage control, wrapped in silk, painted with forgiveness. And funded by the same people who whispered behind my back while applauding to my face. I wasn't invited. Of course, but I got in anyway. Aunt Carol made sure of it. She RSVP'd for me and her. No one recognized me at first. I cut my hair, grown a beard, swapped my warehouse boots for a blazer and clean shoes. I didn't look like the invisible kid anymore. I looked like a ghost returned to collect. The event was held at a rented country club ballroom. Lights dimmed, soft jazz playing. Champagne flutes, fake laughter, flattery dripping like syrup over. Pancakes no one planned to eat. I stood in the corner. Watching. Waiting. Then I saw her. My mother, on stage, dressed in navy blue. Hair curled. Voice amplified through a headset mic, like she was hosting a TED Talk for the delusional. "Our family has been through trials, but we've learned that forgiveness is the only way forward. We don't always get to choose our stories, but we can choose how we tell them." The audience nodded. Clapped politely, smiled like sheep, and that's when I walked forward. Aunt Carol stayed in her seat, but her eyes followed me like twin beams of support, halfway to the stage. My dad spotted me. His face went white. My mother's eyes locked on mine, but she kept talking. "We're so proud of our journey, of the grace we found through adversity. We believe no one is ever truly lost." I stepped up onto the stage beside her, took the mic from her trembling hand, and smiled. "Hi, I'm Elia Jensen. You may know me as the ungrateful son from the documentary this family worked so hard to discredit." A gasp rolled across the room like thunder behind glass. I wasn't invited tonight, but I showed up. Just like I always did, growing up. To family dinners, birthday parties, hospital visits. I showed up, even when they never saw me. Mom stepped forward. "Elia, please. No, Mom, this is my turn." I turned to the crowd. My family didn't want reconciliation. They wanted redemption points, sympathy clout, a rerooted legacy with me. Scrub it from the story. I reached into my pocket, pulled out the flash drive. This contains every voicemail, every text, every lie I've received since the wedding, including the plan for tonight's gala. It's going live online in 30 minutes. My dad shouted, "Enough!" "No, Dad, enough was years ago. When you let me disappear without a word. When you cashed emotional checks from a kid you never bothered to ask if he was okay." I looked around. To everyone here tonight. If you're here for healing, great. But real healing only happens with truth. And truth isn't always polite. I handed the mic to the host, nodded to Aunt Carol, and walked off stage. No applause. Just silence. Real silence. The kind that only happens when masks fall off. We left without dessert. I never looked back. Not once. That night, the live stream went. Viral. Redemption gala trended for 2 days straight. News outlets covered it. Blogs ate it up. Even a few family therapists wrote think pieces about the weaponization of forgiveness. Darcy tried again to spin it. Another Instagram post with a flower emoji caption. Sometimes growth looks like silence. Yeah. Sometimes. Silence looks like guilt. The venue sent my mom a bill for the damages. Guests had started leaving early, complaining about emotional ambush. Sponsors pulled out. The entire rebrand collapsed. And me? I slept better that week than I ever had. Have you ever been pushed so far that the only way forward was to burn the bridge completely? Would you take the risk to finally feel free, even if it meant standing alone? 1 year later, I didn't recognize my life, not because it was flashy, not because it was perfect, but because it was mine. I had my own apartment in Denver. Small, sunlit, quiet. I adopted a dog, a goofy, 3-legged mutt named Jax who never left my side. My digital design side hustle became a full-time business. I had clients, deadlines, freedom.peace. Not silence.peace. Their single quote, "S a difference." I still got letters from my parents, usually typed, sterile, unsigned, statements disguised as apologies. We did the best we could. It was a difficult time for everyone. Families fall apart sometimes. I didn't answer. Why would I? Every response would have been oxygen on a fire they claimed they'd already put out. But then, something unexpected arrived. Not a letter. Not an email. A package. No return address. Just my name. Handwritten. Sloppy. Inside. A VHS tape. I almost laughed. I didn't even own a VCR. But the handwriting. It was familiar. I stared at it for 5 minutes. Then I called Aunt Carol. She still had an old player in her basement. We dusted it off, popped in the tape, and I swear to you, nothing could have prepared me for what was on it. The screen flickered. Then I saw him. My dad, younger, maybe mid-30s, holding baby Darcy in his lap, smiling, and me off to the side, maybe 4 years old. Out of frame. Always out of frame. He looked at the camera and said something I'll never forget. "This one here's the star." He kissed Darcy's head. "That one's the helper." Nods at me without turning. "He'll be the one who keeps it all together." My chest caved in. Even then, they'd already written my role in permanent. Ink. The camera panned for half a second, and there I was, sitting on the floor, quiet, alone, hugging a stuffed bear like it was the only thing that knew I existed. I don't remember the moment, but I remember the feeling, like watching a ghost of my childhood screen without sound. Then the video cut. Just black. Sat there frozen. Aunt Carol said nothing because there was nothing to say. We both knew what this was. Not a confession, not a peace offering, a warning, a final attempt to remind me of the script they'd always wanted me to follow. But they didn't realize something. I'd already rewritten it. 2 weeks later, I got a call from a woman named Isla. She was producing a new series for a major streaming platform. She'd seen the clips, the documentary, the wedding, the gala, but she wasn't interested in a rehash. She wanted the whole story, not the scandal, she said. The soul, the journey, the truth underneath the burn. I said yes. The series dropped 8 months later, The Son They Forgot. Episode 6, the finale, ended with a voiceover I recorded alone in my apartment, staring out at the Denver skyline. Some people are born into families. Others have to build them from the ashes. But if you're still waiting for the apology you'll never get, don't. You're not broken. You're just not who they expected you to be. And that's your power. Opening week, it hit #1. Darcy deleted all her social media. My mother moved to a different state. My dad sent one last envelope. Inside, a check for $8,000. Unsigned. No note. Just a number. I stared at it. Then I flipped it over and wrote, "You paid for your silence. I paid for my voice. Guess who's still speaking?" Then I ripped it in half, burned it, flushed the ashes. And took Jax for a walk in the sunrise. So tell me, what would you do if the people who erased you suddenly wanted back in? Would you forgive or finally live free? Drop your truth in the comments, because your voice might be the one someone else is waiting to hear. That's the end of today's story. Did things turn out the way you thought? Or were there some surprises along the way? Share your thoughts in the comments. I'd love to hear what you think. If you enjoyed this journey, don't forget to hit the like button And if you haven't joined the community yet, now's the perfect time. Subscribe and turn on notifications so you're always the first to catch new stories. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next adventure.